Hello, this is Dr. Jackalyn with DTP-Leadership Group, and this is Hot Topic Bold Type Talk. I want to talk about our nation and how it's in peril. We have Trump in his power games and grabs, and we are at a point when we have to fight for our democracy. So I don't know about y'all, but I am really tired of the news every day being something Trump and the mega Republicans in Congress are doing since they got into office. I think it's important not to miss the fact that there are things that happened on Monday that show a lack of respect for the governor or prior to Monday. And then also citizens of the United States that need health care, but they're about to try to eliminate some of that. People dying in the world since we cut off vaccines and other medications. And after having medications available and nothing is being done about them, it's because of the fact that they were never distributed. I'm going to give you more detail about that. I think it's also amazing that we would have uneducated people to have the power to question great scientists that are medically trained, scientifically trained, and we've trusted them for years based on their professional knowledge and experience that we've had with them. I think it's outrageous that a president assumes he can take over the National Guard of a state and refuse to talk with the governor. The big, beautiful bill of Trump design has so much harm in it that people will lose, and they are now screaming about it in town hall meetings. So this podcast is to take a lot of articles and to put them together to show even more clearly what is happening in America. When lives in this country and throughout the world are lost or impacted, then this leaves me feeling angry, disgusted, and dismayed. The Washington Post on May 30th, Friday, has shouted out about Rubio's false claim that no one died from foreign aid cuts. And it was a part of their fact check that they do every week. The reality is that Representative Sherman, a Democrat from California, confronted Rubio about the numerous accounts of people around the world dying because Trump's administration and the Elon Musk dismantled the U.S. Agency for International Development and shut it down, and all the programs that were related to it. Rubio had the audacity to say that no one's died because of U.S. AIDS. He flat lied. Here's what the truth is. There is no question that people have died because of U.S. AIDS suspension. There is an estimate of 300,000 deaths so far. So to me, it's really kind of amazing. All these megas claim they're Christian. I don't see how that can be, since they could care less about human beings that are not like them. In fact, it just seems ridiculous to me, because that's not the type of Christianity I was taught from my mother, who was a Bible scholar. The amount the U.S. was spending on the AIDS packages is minimal compared to the cost of Musk federal projects and anything that Trump does with his tariff game. So let's look at what exactly is aiding no one. How has Trump's policies threatened global health and human dignity? Do you know that the United States bought 12 million in contraceptives and HIV medications for poor nations, and under Trump, the supplies may be destroyed? That's the title of the Washington Post article. So we have medical supplies that we could help people with that are available. But under Trump, nothing is done about them. In fact, there are aid organizations that have been trying to talk to the administration and get control of those supplies. And they were negotiating, but they've been stalled because of the shifting directives from the government, including demands that the group pay for the materials and that they take off U.S. aid labels on all the materials. Now, a post-examination found that most of the material is already closer to expiration than many countries would typically assist. $12 million of materials, of medical materials. Then let's go to the next item. Mass firings and government chaos. The Dodge disaster unraveling federal services. So then we have another article from the Washington Post on June 6th entitled, Trump's administration races to fix a big mistake. Dodge fired too many people. This describes the understaffed and overwhelming agencies and how the courts ruled against the firings, and then sometimes things change. Thousands of staff are returning in fits and starts as a conflicting patchwork of court decisions overturn some of Trump's large-scale firings, especially his Valentine's Day dismissal of all probationary workers. Now, there is a case which is different from the one we're talking about there, that has halted a few small group of probationary individuals. What the Washington Post is doing with this article is fascinating. It is encouraging people to give information to the Washington Post about anything that they possibly know about Dodge, or about anything else that's happening in the Trump administration. And what's even more interesting, they have the name of several of their investigative reporters, their email, and then they have a way in which they say the Washington Post wants to hear from anyone with knowledge of the Trump administration's inner workings, including the activities of the U.S. Dodge service. You can contact our reporters by email or signal encrypted messages. In that same article, Barry Bryan, who's president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 2009, describes the firings that occurred in the Social Security Administration's call center in Pennsylvania. She said IT workers were told by their managers in mid-April that they needed to request a transfer, or they might be fired. So they all turned in all the materials and they left. That was almost an entire office. So Bryant wrote in an email to the Washington Post that she wrote to the leadership, we are critically understaffed. We have systems and employees we have systems and employees that are down because we have no way to service the people this agency is supposed to service. Then there's another situation going on in our country, the legal resistance, lawyers standing up as defenders of democracy. I'm listening to a series in June from the American Constitutional Society that is very informative about the power plays by Trump in the next session. There are 3 more coming up. And I would encourage you to write to obtain information about the American Constitutional Society, or literally Joseph Singer, Senger, at Joseph at acslaw.org is willing to have anyone email him if you're interested in some of these programs. I listen to them all the time. There's no specific membership fee for the American Constitutional Society. You can give donations, and that's what I do. When I attend things, then I try to give a donation. They're excellent. In the Washington Post on Friday, we also have an article that addresses amid fallout from Trump's attack on law firms. I think it's appalling to me that a president thinks they have the power to do something with law firms or even ignore the rule of law. So what is happening is Damian Williams, the former top federal prosecutor in Manhattan, is leaving the law firm of Paul Wise to join Jenner and Block, defecting from a firm that's struck a deal with the Trump administration to sign on with one that fought it in court. Williams is the highest profile attorney to join the exodus from firms that made deals with President Trump this year. And we know continually there are courts reviewing and maintaining positions so that we can be helpful. Then you can't depend on what the Supreme Court is going to do. It gets there. Distraction theater is another thing that I think we're looking at. The Musk-Trump meltdown is a way of hiding deeper crises. I love Forbes sometimes because they take this the simplest way to describe situations, and after I read it, I find, oh, I really understand now what happened. So in the Forbes newsletter on Monday the 9th, they have an article, a breathtaking display of what not to do in business. And they describe the fight between Musk and Trump. And they say, when a CEO has a falling out with another leader, it's usually not a huge news story. When that CEO is Elon Musk, it's another matter entirely. The CEO of companies include Tesla, SpaceX, and XAI, is known for his dramatic and mercurial management and personal style, and it's amplified by his social media platform X. And in this case, the other leader is President Donald Trump, who's also known for a dramatic, volatile personal style. Now, both men are widely considered difficult to work with, and the strength of the close bond they forged, with probably more than a little help from Musk's more than $250 million in campaign contributions during the election, has been widely questioned. And last week, it all ended in a spectacular fashion, as Forbes describes. From X, Musk began attacking Trump and the administration for the Big Beautiful Bill, which features tax cuts and adding trillions to the deficit. And Trump hits back on Truth Social, threatening to cancel all the contracts Musk has with the federal government and pledging to sell the Tesla he bought earlier in the year when Musk bought several models to show off at the White House. And because they both have their social media accounts and they're public, the world watched, jarred, laughed, and memed. Now, the personal attacks have died down. And the Forbes author said it's really highly unlikely that all SpaceX contracts will be canceled, considering that NASA depends on the company's rockets and satellites. I really like what Forbes has said in the following. But Trump and Musk have again put on a breathtaking display of what not to do in business. It should be apparent that business leaders should avoid getting into an emotional fight on social media, but neither Trump nor Musk is known for doing anything by the book. Musk's Tesla and Trump's media and technology group are gravely impacted after these fights. And even though it's erased billions, Musk's net worth is not diminished enough for him to lose his position as the world's richest person. They go on to say in this article that it is unclear what will happen now. Musk was successful in getting some Republicans in Congress and ordinary people to start questioning the spending bill. And though his net worth did take a beating, Russ's role in the Trump administration as head of Dodge mercilessly went through government departments, bureaucracies, and career employees, tearing away at many functions that have existed for generations, and he never found fraud that he thought existed. Many of Tesla's shareholders, including several union pension funds, are growing tired of Musk as the CEO of the company. They are pushing for his removal. In this Forbes article, CEOs are not happy either with the state of the economy and the business opportunities. CEOs reply that they are very pessimistic about many business factors. A total of 82 said today's economic conditions are worse than 6 months ago. Nearly 7 in 10 said conditions in their industries are now worse than they were 6 months ago. 64% expect economic conditions to get worse in the next 6 months, and about 83% anticipate a recession in the next 12 to 18 months. The biggest concern for CEOs in all industries are geopolitical insecurity, trade and tariffs, and legal regulatory uncertainty. Trump is trying to eliminate anything that has regulatory direction. With all the issues, however, most CEOs aren't anticipating a deviation from the hiring plan. At least half of them are going to maintain the same size that they have in the work and now for the workforce, compared with first quarter, where only 1% more expected a net reduction. Let's look now at the authoritarian outreach in California. Trump versus state sovereignty. I've lived a long time in this country, and I am appalled that Trump would even have the audacity to do this. He's just pissed off at Governor Newsom. The state of California and the Governors Association, though, are suing Trump for his actions. And the New York Times on Monday had an article called Breaking News: California will sue Trump over National Guard deployment. And Newsom says, Governor Gavin Newsom and other leaders demand that President Trump withdraw troops from Los Angeles after the police scuffled with crowds protesting the administration's immigration crackdown. Another article in the same newsletter you might find interesting as well. President Trump jumped at the chance for a confrontation in California over immigration. After reading a number of articles about the raid and Trump sending the National Guard, threatening to send the Marines to LA, and now Trump has gone on television to announce that the United States would now call for the arrest of a sitting governor, which happens to be Newsom. This is like a spectator sport for Trump. Personally, I feel bored and at the same time really disturbed and afraid to have a president that reacts to everything he does not like when he doesn't get the power he wants, and he threatens and ignores the Constitution and the amendments that allow people to have protests. Many of the articles say that the mayor, Karen Bass, she's the mayor of Los Angeles, issued a stark warning. She let everyone know in LA that it was okay for people to protest peacefully. But Bass made it clear that there would be no violence or destruction, or she would hold people accountable, and the LA police would do that. Now, as we go on, here's some other parts to the story that I think are really important. The Public Citizen is an outstanding organization with very skilled lawyers, and I've used them many times in describing things in my podcast. And in their newsletter on June 9th, they called it authoritarianism on the streets in Los Angeles. And they described the view of what happened in this situation. Here's what they say from the Public Citizen newsletter. Trump deployed at least 2,000 National Guard troops in Los Angeles against the wishes of the city mayor, Karen Bass, and the California governor, Gavin Newsom. Newsom accurately called what Trump did as purposefully inflaming the situation, and it was a serious breach of state sovereignty. Now, here's what the Public Citizen describes. Interestingly enough, a more conservative paper that I read has very similar descriptions what the Public Citizen does. Here's what they say. This started on Friday when the Trump regime raided workplaces throughout Los Angeles. Many people rightfully outraged at the regime's ongoing campaign of militant xenophobia and unlawful deportation took the streets in a peaceful protest. Trump then used the peaceful demonstration against his own misguided raids as an excuse to send in the National Guard, and an authoritarian overreach that is generally considered to be ridiculous because we have the right to dissent in America. As is so often the case, law enforcement has overreacted. The National Guard overreacted. According to news reports, peaceful protesters have been tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets at close range. David Huta, the well-known leader of the Service Employees International Union in Los Angeles, who was present at one of the raids as a peaceful observer, was arrested and wounded in the process. Some news outlets are out there trying to show that the protests looked like they were unruly and out of control to justify Trump's actions. The overwhelming evidence, though, from numerous, and this is what the Public Citizen is saying, from numerous resources that are legitimate resources, that that Los Angeles was a demonstration that was committed to be a peaceful demonstration, and that the law enforcement is the one that instigated the vast majority of the confrontations. Trump has also said his defense secretary, who I think is outrageous, was going to use regular military troops as necessary. And so they had active Marines stationed 100 miles from Los Angeles on high alert. Now, on Sunday, Trump refused to rule out evoking the Insurrection Act and said this to reporters: "We're going to have troops everywhere. We should not be surprised, furious but not surprised, if Trump uses all of this as a pretense to declare martial law." Please know something. It has been 60 years since a president deployed the National Guard to a state against the wishes of the state governor. It happened in 1965 when Lyndon Baines Johnson deployed the National Guard to protect civil rights activists against the wishes of the Alabama's infamously segregationist governor, George Wallace. I think that's a reason it's in the National Guard. What Trump did is just another thing that has nothing to do, except he wants to try to show Newsom that he has more power than Newsom has. Along with California, 22 other states currently have a Democratic governor. All 22 of those governors signed an open letter standing with the Governor Newsom and condemning what Trump is doing in Los Angeles, correctly declaring it to be an alarming abuse of power. Now, I read the Epoch Times. It is an investigative, independent news media, and it has excellent investigative journalists. And I read it because they give all the facts. Sometimes I don't like them, but I still read it anyway because I want a media that tells me all the facts of what happened. Here's the parts of the story that they add to what the public citizen has already, something I've given you. So the Epoch Times says, here are the statements that have been made, and there are a number of them. They have them listed in the order that they occurred. I'm only going to give you a few, so you may want to read them. I have formally requested the Trump administration rescind their unlawful deployment of troops in Los Angeles County and return them to my command, Newsom says. Governor is supposed to be in charge of the National Guard in their state. Next statement. We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved, he said. This is a serious breach of state sovereignty, inflaming tension by pulling resources from where they're actually needed. Bass, of course, who's the mayor of Los Angeles, in the meantime said that the deployment of guardsmen to the city was a chaotic escalation. She said during an appearance on the CNN that the Los Angeles Police Department could control things happening here, and there was no reason to send federal troops. Under the Posse Comitas Act, active duty military can only be deployed in special circumstances. The Insurrection Act, which Trump has not yet committed to using, lists these exceptions, which includes things like suppressing insurrections, enforcing federal authority, and protecting civil rights in state authorities failed to act. That's not what was happening. They were acting. Bass and Newsom were acting. They didn't need any help. If you want to hear more of Trump's comments on Truth Social, then Epoch Times includes them in their article. That is the reason I read the Epoch Times, since it gives me all of what each party says or what they do. I personally think it is fascinating that Trump cannot see that the mayor and the governor of California are well aware of how to deal with protests. I truly believe that Bass and Newsom have a deep conviction and commitment to protect law enforcement and to use it appropriately. Tragically, Trump failed to call up the National Guard when it was actually needed on January 6th, and then had the audacity to pardon the participants as one of his first acts as president. Now, I've also mentioned to you that the Democratic Governors Association legal counsel, Courtney Wiseman, has some points of law to consider about Trump's actions. She describes this in a newsletter for the Democratic Governors Association on Monday, June 9th. Here's what I would describe as a perfect description of voter suppression in disguise and Trump's executive assaults on election integrity. Here's what they say in the governor's, she says in the governor's article. The dangerous executive order contains harmful provisions which would invalidate state laws that count mail-in ballots cast by election day, force federal agencies to reveal sensitive personal information about millions of voters to dodge, threaten to withhold federal funds from states to ensure compliance with this unlawful order, require changes to a congressionally mandated voter registration form despite contrary guidance from Congress, and impose unreasonable burdens on overseas voters, including active duty service members and their families. And she says, it's a dangerous paragraph designed to add obstacles after obstacle for American citizens to make their vote heard or their voice heard. It would tip future elections in Republicans' favor and punish states working to protect voting rights. While a judge issued a preliminary injunction to block multiple provisions of it, it is just a first step, she says. In court, Donald Trump is losing more cases than he's winning, and it's no wonder why. He's shamelessly attempting to violate the law and undermine our Constitution. That's the reason that the Democratic governors are suing Trump. And one of my favorites, of course, is David Fromm with the Atlantic. And he has an article that I think says it clearly. California was a dress rehearsal. And I think it's the Atlantic stark warning about what will come next. And David Fromm's article is titled, "For Trump, This is a Dress Rehearsal." His subtitle is, "Ordering the National Guard to deploy in Los Angeles is a warning of what to expect when his hold on power is threatened." Here's what a number of observers are concerned about with the midterm elections in 2026. This is what they say are the steps that he could take that would prevent us from having legitimate elections and that will allow him to stay in power. Step one, use federal power in ways to revoke some kind of make-for-TV disturbance, flames, smoke, loud noises, waving of foreign flags. So this is what they think Trump could easily use, because he is totally incapable of making really thoughtful decisions. Step two, invoke the disturbance to declare a state of emergency and deploy federal troops. 3, seize control of local operations of government. Policing in June 2025 of these operations, and then the voting occurs in November of 2026. They end the article with, Trump knows full well that the midterms are coming. He's worried, but he might already be testing ways to protect himself that could end in subverting these elections and the integrity of these elections. So it is time for all of us to stand up. So I want to conclude this podcast with the following. The world we live in today, under Trump's tyranny and MAGA's manufactured cruelty, is not the world that I want to live in. I hope it's not what you want to live in. What kind of nation silences science, crushes protests, and punishes compassion? What kind of leadership cuts off medicine to the dying, wages war on its own citizens, and dares to call it a strength? Yet through all this, we are not powerless. We see the cracks in the illusion. We see the lawyers rising, the governors uniting, and the people resisting. We see truth fighting to breathe through the smog of propaganda that Trump does. This podcast is a call up and say, wake up, reject this distraction, and take action. It's not just about Trump or Musk. It's about whether we still believe in a government that serves people, protects rights, and values human life. We must not let exhaustion become acceptance. We must name what's wrong, and then we must choose what's right. Let's build the world we deserve. Let's start it now. I appreciate you listening to Hot Topic Bold Talk. Hot Topic Bold Talk, excuse me. I would really like for you to consider supporting my podcast by only giving $5 a month to Patreon. I'm committed to doing the best job I can to take multiple articles and put them into an article that can make some sense for you and for me. Thank you.